this episode, we focus on the part of AI risk management that sounds simple until you try to do it during a real deadline: human oversight. Many beginners assume oversight just means a person is somewhere nearby who can step in if the model gets something wrong, but that assumption breaks down the moment the workflow gets busy. When the system is fast and confident, people naturally start trusting it, and when the stakes rise, people naturally want the system to be even faster. Human oversight is the structured set of decisions, permissions, and responsibilities that make sure humans remain meaningfully in control, not just technically responsible on paper. The title points to three oversight mechanics that must be designed deliberately: approvals, overrides, and accountability under pressure. By the end, you should be able to explain why oversight fails when it is vague, and how good oversight design protects people even when time and stress would normally push them toward shortcuts. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful way to define oversight is to say it is the system of checks that ensures the AI output does not become an automatic decision when a human decision is required. That definition matters because many organizations accidentally build automation while claiming they kept humans in the loop. Oversight is not a feeling, and it is not a slogan like humans are responsible. It is a set of control points where a person can review, approve, change, or stop what the system is doing. Oversight also includes how the system communicates uncertainty and limitations, because a human cannot review effectively if they are misled into thinking the output is verified truth. Another beginner misunderstanding is that adding a warning message creates oversight, but warnings often get ignored when people are busy. Oversight becomes real when the workflow requires a human action for high-impact outcomes, and when the human has the information needed to make that action meaningful. If the human is expected to approve but has no context, the approval is ceremonial. A strong oversight design, therefore, starts with understanding where decisions actually happen. Approvals are the first oversight mechanic, and approvals matter because they create deliberate pauses at the moments where harm can occur. An approval is a formal decision that something is allowed to proceed, such as allowing a model output to be sent to a customer, allowing a recommendation to influence an operational action, or allowing a high-risk feature to be enabled for a group of users. Approvals are not about slowing everything down. They are about preventing high-impact actions from being triggered by unreviewed outputs. For beginners, it helps to see approvals as gates that separate suggestion from action. If the AI output is only a draft, the user can review and edit, but if the output triggers a real change, an approval gate is needed because the consequences are broader and harder to reverse. Approvals also create accountability evidence, because you can later show who approved what and why. When approvals are designed well, they are proportional, meaning low-risk outputs flow quickly, while high-risk outputs require deeper review. A common problem with approvals is that they can become rubber stamps when reviewers are overloaded or when the approval process is unclear. If a person is asked to approve dozens of items quickly, the approval becomes a performance ritual rather than a safety control. Oversight design must therefore include realistic capacity thinking, meaning you choose approval points that humans can actually perform with care. It also includes clarity about approval criteria, because people cannot make consistent decisions if they do not know what success and failure look like. Beginners sometimes assume a skilled reviewer will just know, but under pressure, even experts need simple standards they can apply quickly. Approval criteria should include the kinds of risks that matter, such as privacy exposure, unsafe recommendations, misleading claims, and fairness concerns, in a form that a reviewer can recognize. The human should also have an easy path to reject or escalate, because approval without a clear rejection path is not real oversight. When the process supports real judgment, approvals reduce harm rather than merely shifting blame. Overrides are the second oversight mechanic, and they matter because even a good AI system will sometimes be wrong in unexpected ways. An override is the ability for a human to change, correct, or stop the system's output or action, and that ability must exist both at the moment of decision and after the fact when consequences emerge. Beginners sometimes imagine overrides as manual editing, but overrides can also mean stopping a workflow, disabling a feature, or switching to a safer fallback when conditions are unstable. The reason overrides belong in Domain 3 is that they are lifecycle controls, not just user interface features. If a system cannot be overridden quickly, then a bad output can keep spreading while teams argue about what to do. Overrides also protect users because they reduce the fear of using AI. People are more willing to adopt a tool when they know they can correct it easily. An override is a safety valve, and like any safety valve, it is only useful if it is reachable and trusted. If overrides are hidden or punished, they will not be used when needed. Overrides can fail in subtle ways that beginners should learn to recognize, especially when organizations assume the human will catch errors without giving them tools to do so. One failure is slow overrides, where the process for stopping harm requires too many approvals or too many technical steps, which makes it useless during a fast-moving incident. Another failure is unclear authority, where people do not know who is allowed to override, so everyone waits, and waiting becomes harm. A third failure is missing context, where the human sees the output but not the evidence or constraints that shaped it, so the human cannot confidently decide whether to override. A fourth failure is social pressure, where overriding is treated as being difficult or not being a team player, so people let bad outputs pass. Oversight design must plan for these failures by making override paths clear, quick, and acceptable. An organization that claims humans can override but makes overriding painful is not truly practicing oversight. When overrides are treated as normal and supported by evidence, they become a powerful safety control. Accountability is the third mechanic, and it is the one that becomes most controversial under pressure because people fear accountability means blame. In risk management, accountability means the organization clearly defines who is responsible for decisions, what decisions they are responsible for, and what evidence shows those decisions were made thoughtfully. Accountability is what keeps oversight from turning into a vague statement that a human is responsible for whatever the AI does. If a model produces a harmful recommendation, accountability asks who decided the model was allowed to provide recommendations in that context, who approved the safety tests, and who owns monitoring and response. Beginners sometimes think accountability only matters after an incident, but accountability is most valuable before incidents because it clarifies decision rights and speeds up response. Under pressure, unclear accountability produces chaos because teams argue about ownership instead of acting. Clear accountability also makes oversight fairer because people are not held responsible for decisions they were never empowered to make. When accountability is defined, it becomes easier to design approvals and overrides that match real responsibility. Pressure is the environment that breaks weak oversight, and that is why the title explicitly calls out accountability under pressure rather than in calm conditions. Under pressure, people shorten reviews, accept vague explanations, and prioritize speed, which is understandable but risky. AI systems can amplify this because they produce outputs quickly, and quick outputs create the illusion that the right decision is obvious. Oversight design must therefore assume that humans will be rushed and that the system will sometimes appear more confident than it deserves. This is where structured gates matter, because structure can hold when attention fails. It is also where training matters, because reviewers need to recognize common failure modes like hallucinations and unsafe recommendations without needing to do deep analysis every time. Another practical idea is that oversight should be resilient to staff turnover and fatigue, meaning the process should not rely on a single expert who is always available. When oversight is designed for pressure, it protects users during the moments when humans are most likely to make mistakes. A major beginner misunderstanding is thinking that human in the loop automatically means safe, because the phrase sounds reassuring. Human in the loop can be meaningless if the human is not empowered, not informed, or not realistically able to intervene. If a human must approve an output but the system produces hundreds of outputs per hour, the loop exists in name only. If the human sees a polished output but cannot see what it is based on, the loop becomes guesswork. If the human is accountable for outcomes but lacks authority to change the system, the loop becomes unfair. Oversight works when the human's role is meaningful and when the process is designed to support that role with time, context, and authority. Beginners should also understand that there are different levels of oversight, from simple review of drafts to strict approvals for high-impact actions. The right level depends on consequences, not on convenience. When you tie oversight intensity to impact, you build a system that is both usable and safe. Meaningful oversight also depends on making uncertainty visible, because humans are better at good judgment when they know what is uncertain. A model that speaks in absolute terms can push humans toward passive acceptance, especially when the human is not confident in the subject. Oversight design should therefore consider how the system communicates limitations, confidence, and the conditions where it is more likely to fail. This does not mean the model should produce long warnings. It means the interface and workflow should encourage verification for high-impact claims and should make it easy to trace outputs back to evidence when evidence exists. For example, when a system summarizes content, a reviewer benefits from seeing the source context that the summary was based on, because that supports real review rather than trust. When a system recommends actions, a reviewer benefits from seeing the assumptions, because unsafe recommendations often arise from missing context. The more the human can see how the output connects to inputs, the more effective the oversight becomes. When uncertainty is hidden, the oversight role collapses into faith. Oversight also intersects with access control, because who is allowed to approve and override is itself a permission boundary. If everyone can approve, approvals lose meaning, and if no one can override quickly, overrides are useless. A mature program defines roles for reviewers and approvers and limits those roles to trained individuals who understand the risks and the criteria. This does not mean elitism. It means protecting safety-critical decisions from being made casually. It also means separating responsibilities, so the person who built a change is not the only person who can approve it, because separation of duties reduces the chance that bias or blind spots slip through. Another important idea is escalation, because some decisions should be elevated when stakes are high, and oversight design should make escalation easy rather than humiliating. Beginners sometimes think escalation is failure, but escalation is a control that prevents individuals from being forced to make decisions beyond their authority. When access, roles, and escalation are aligned, oversight becomes faster and more reliable under pressure. Human oversight must also be integrated into incident response, because incidents are the moments where approvals and overrides are tested. If the system begins producing harmful outputs, the organization needs clear authority to contain the problem, which may include disabling features or restricting access. That is an override at the program level, not just an individual editing a response. If the organization must communicate externally, someone must approve messaging, which is an approval gate that protects accuracy and trust. If the organization must decide whether to roll back a model update, that decision should be owned and documented, which is accountability in action. Beginners should see that oversight is not only about preventing mistakes in normal operation. It is also about enabling fast, controlled response when things go wrong. A weak oversight design slows incidents because nobody knows who can act. A strong oversight design speeds containment because authority and pathways are already known. When oversight is connected to triage and containment, the program becomes more resilient. Another place oversight matters is in monitoring and drift response, because drift often triggers ambiguous signals rather than obvious failures. If monitoring shows a gradual rise in errors, someone must decide whether to tighten guardrails, restrict use, or retrain, and those decisions should not be made informally by whoever noticed the chart first. Oversight provides a structured way to review evidence, approve changes, and override risky behavior before it becomes an incident. Beginners sometimes think monitoring is passive and that action is automatic, but action requires human judgment, especially when there are trade-offs like usefulness versus restriction. This is where accountability under pressure matters again, because business leaders may push to keep the feature live, while risk teams push to restrict it. A clear oversight process helps because it defines who decides and what evidence is required, reducing arguments and speeding resolution. Oversight also ensures that when the organization accepts a risk temporarily, that acceptance is documented and reviewed rather than forgotten. Monitoring without oversight is just observation, and observation does not protect users. To make oversight sustainable, organizations need to design it so that people can actually do it well, which means the process must fit human limits. Reviewers need clear criteria, manageable workload, and tools that surface the right context without overwhelming them. They also need psychological safety to override and escalate, because fear of being seen as slow or difficult is a real pressure that leads to silent acceptance of risk. Training must be role-specific, because approvers and responders need different knowledge than everyday users. The program should also learn from mistakes, because every override, escalation, and incident teaches you where the system or the process created unnecessary risk. Beginners should remember that oversight is not static. It should evolve as the system evolves and as the organization gains experience with real-world behavior. When oversight is treated as a living control, it becomes stronger over time rather than weaker. The end goal is not perfection, but reliable decision-making when it matters most. As we close, managing human oversight is about designing approvals, overrides, and accountability so that humans remain meaningfully in control even when speed and stress push toward shortcuts. Approvals create deliberate gates that separate suggestions from actions, and they only work when criteria are clear and workload is realistic. Overrides provide safety valves that let humans correct or stop harmful behavior quickly, and they only work when authority and pathways are unambiguous and socially acceptable. Accountability defines who owns decisions and evidence, preventing the common failure where humans are blamed for outcomes they could not realistically control. Under pressure, weak oversight collapses into rubber stamping and confusion, while strong oversight remains usable because it is structured, permissioned, and supported by context and training. Oversight also connects to incident response and drift monitoring, because those are the moments when human decisions protect users in real time. For brand new learners, the key takeaway is that human oversight is not a vague promise that someone is responsible. It is an engineered set of controls that makes safe behavior possible when the clock is running and the stakes are real.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.